this morning I have got a question, and it is really about it's about sexuality and sexuality in relationships. And the main gist of the question is, can a woman take her emotions out of their sexual relationship? It's an interesting question. It's interesting in that it's also looking at the importance of sex in a relationship. So what I'll do is I will read you the question. Hi, Roma, how are you? I will read you the question and then I'll do my answer as I normally do. So here we go. Elizabeth, I have so many questions that I do not know where to start. What is weighing heavily on my mind at the moment is about sex. I have been separated and eventually divorced for quite a while, and I've lost track of time. I started dating and made a real mess of it. I was older and my only rules of engagement for dating were laid when I was in my teens and early 20s. I wanted a real relationship, friendship, not a series of coffee dates, one-night stands, or friends with benefits. I actually considered trying that, but couldn't get my head around it. I couldn't keep my emotions disengaged. I've done a lot of reading and understand now why men can do that more easily and why women find it more difficult. You were talking about this the other day, and I think it was in one of the other Facebook Lives, and I sort of talked about how it's a really debated topic, and some counsellors believe women can and some counsellors believe women can't. It's very interesting. I met a wonderful man 3 years ago, but for many reasons I cannot see a future as a long-time life partner. For many reasons I won't discuss now as it's very complicated. One important one is that we do not have an intimate relationship, and sex and intimacy is for me a very important part of a relationship. He is older and has erectile dysfunction problems. He tried various things that didn't help. Not that he was willing to try more than a couple of times for fear of failure. I'd say yes. And he may know a little bit more about this than he's letting on to you. Do you know what I mean? Like, he may actually know why he's got this problem, and he may know that there isn't an easy solution to it. It could be medical. You know, there's a whole reason why men have sexual dysfunction problems. Sometimes it's in their head. Sometimes it really is physical, and there isn't really much can be done about it. Other times there is. This is a very difficult topic to talk about with a man. It threatens their masculinity terribly. Some time ago, he told me his problems with sex were because I am overweight. Just what a woman likes to hear, that she is sexually unattractive. Interestingly enough, I've had a couple of short relationships before meeting him in which my weight wasn't an issue or an inhibiting factor. And yes, I wonder if he's trying to deflect away from himself with that. Now I come to my dilemma. I want to maintain the friendship I have with this man and not destroy my current situation. A man I met 4 years ago has reconnected and wants to meet up. He volunteered to give me a massage after I was commenting on all my aches and pains from gardening. On one level, I want very much for this, and I'm aware that if it would probably not stop there. I reckon not. He desires and wants very much to have passionate sex with me. We haven't been intimate before. After the drought I've been in, that is on one level very appealing. The reasons that our relationship didn't progress further 4 years ago are all still there. I don't want to become emotionally entangled with him, which is what I fear would happen if we did have sex. Is it possible for a woman to have her physical needs met and not emotionally bond with a man? I'm not writing to ask you to tell me what to do or to say it's all right, but maybe more to help clarify things in my mind. I'm not very good at being anything other than open and honest, and I think this would probably be very hurtful to my other friend if he found out that I have been out and had some fun. I fear that my need to be secretive may be destructive to the good relationship I have with the first man. I feel I should clarify things with him first, but really don't know how to do this. Most of all, I don't want to lose the friendship with this man, which is what I fear would happen if I went off and had a fling. Wow, you've got a lot going on. So there's a couple of things here. There's answering the question about whether women can separate their emotions from sex. And then there's the question about how you manage what's going on for you. And it's interesting that I just find these questions really interesting, because I often find that when people ask me questions, they write the whole thing and they've almost answered it themselves by the time they get to the end of the question. So, what I would say to you is the whole question of whether women can separate their feelings away from their sexual relationships is one that is constantly debated. And I think in one of my other Facebook lives, I talked about my supervisor and I sitting on one side of the room and saying, no, they can't, and 3 other counsellors on the other side of the room saying, yes, they can. And, you know, look, I think I've had clients say to me that if a woman goes into a relationship with her eyes open and she knows why she's having sex and she's very clear about the whole thing in her head, then yes, she can. The trouble comes with the fact that sex is the glue that holds our relationship together, and this is why you're having these problems with this guy in your life, because it's something that we naturally progress to. Hi Kay, how are you? It's something we naturally progress to in a relationship. So what I would say to you is you need to think about what's right for you, because it's a question that's open to a whole lot of conjecture. So you need to think about the fact that you have tried to do friends with benefits. You've tried coffee dates and it didn't work for you. So you need to think about that in terms of the answer that's right for you about whether you could separate your emotion away from your sexual relationship. Okay? So that's my answer to that part of it. Now, the next part of it is I think you need to think about the man you're with at the moment, the one that is having the sexual difficulty. You're saying you don't want to spoil your friendship you've got with him, but then I'm a little bit confused because you're saying that you can't see a future with him as a long-term life partner. So I'm a little bit confused there. But what I would say to you is, what I can see happening here is there's an issue like an elephant in the room between you. You've kind of tried to solve it. He won't talk about it. You feel worried about confronting him about it. And so you've got this like elephant in the room between you. And what's happening is you're now seeking an escape, and you've got this, well, I don't know that you're seeking the escape. An escape route's come past you with this other guy, and I'll talk to you about him in a minute. But this opportunity to have sex has come past you, and you're now debating whether to take it or not. And this is how affairs start. If you think about the primary relationship, which is the one you're talking to me about with the partner who struggles with sex as your primary relationship, affairs happen when an opportunity comes along to escape from the issues in the primary relationship, and the affair happens because we take that opportunity. So essentially what you're talking about, it's just that you're not married to this guy. Gosh, I hope you can hear me with all that noise going on. Is that what you're talking about is the fact that you are contemplating having an affair or two-timing him or whatever you want to talk about. And it is perfectly understandable that you would be feeling like that because you're a red-blooded woman, you know? Whether you're older and your hormones are a little bit different, doesn't matter. You're a red-blooded woman and you want to have sex. We all do. And so it's like someone's got the candy over here and you're having to say to yourself, you know what, I want to go over there, but hey. So it really gets down to what your thoughts are about this main relationship and whether you feel you can talk to him about the problem. Now, you're saying to me that, and I did précis this a little bit because there was concern about confidentiality, so I précised it down a little bit, but you're saying to me you can't talk to him well about it. So what you need to do is you need to use what I call a shit sandwich, if you possibly can, to talk to him about this. Because if you don't, whether it's this guy you met 4 years ago or not, someone else will come past and tempt you. And you will feel tempted. This is not a problem that's going to go away. So if you can possibly say to him, I think you're wonderful. I love being with you. If you can talk about some of the physical aspects of the relationship that are good, when you hold me, I feel fabulous. When you kiss me, it's wonderful. And tell him, I'm a red-blooded woman and I want more. And unfortunately, we come to a stopping point and I'm feeling really tempted to go and get more elsewhere, and I really don't want to do that. Be honest. Now, then you need to broach the fact that maybe you need to solve this sexual problem in a different way. And as you would know, unless you've been under a rock, there are all kinds of sexual toys out there that you can go and explore to solve this problem. But he has to be willing to talk about that. If he's not, then, I guess you do risk the future of the relationship, or you open up the conversation with him that this is a wonderful, special friendship, but that there's parts of you that you need to have satisfied. And it means that then you can be open and honest with him. What's the benefit of that? You give him the opportunity to know how you're feeling. The benefit of that is it builds intimacy. Now, you said something about you don't see him as a long-term relationship. If that's the case, then you need to think about the consequences of having this conversation with him, because if you do, you're opening it up for further long-term commitment because you're building intimacy. You're telling him how you feel. So there's a lot of very careful thinking that needs to be done here if you're going to open up that conversation with the primary partner that has the sexual issue. If you don't, and you decide to take your desires elsewhere, there is that issue that you might be caught, and you are trusting that this other person, whether it's the guy that's come back into your life or it's someone else, and I've said to you, if it's not him, it'll be someone else, because these feelings are not going to go away. If it's, you're trusting that this person is going to be as confidential as you, and that they won't make a silly mistake and cause your primary relationship to find out that you're getting a bit on the side. So you are going to be living with a certain amount of stress if you go down this pathway, which all people who choose to have affairs will tell you happens. Now, some people get off on the stress and they think it's all part of the thrill of having an affair and the distraction, because it gives their mind something else to think about other than the problems in the main relationship. But it may be for you, I swear it's a conspiracy. Every time I want to do Facebook Live, someone does something with noise. I don't know if you can hear it or not. If you can't hear me, please put a message in the comments. So, if, you really need to think very carefully about whether you think you could live with that amount of stress in your relationship. Very important. Or in your life. Very important. So that's my recommendation for how you manage this. Now the other guy. Now what he's done, he's come back into your relationship. So if we think about the actual idea of a cycle, and you've said to me there were issues with him, that you didn't actually have sex with him previously, but there were issues with him. So already you know, there's stuff about him that maybe isn't so healthy. So I would say proceed with caution. Now, what's happening here is he's come back into your relationship and he is barefaced pursuing you. He said he'll have sex with you, He's giving you what you want. He's pursuing you. So if you think about the cycle, you've got an argument at the top. Then you have the pause. Now, I don't know how long this pause has lasted with this guy, but something's happened to cause you to separate away from him. It could have been just an event, it could have been an argument, it could have been anything, but something's caused you to separate away from him. And then 4 years have passed, so you've had a 4-year pause. And remember, I've told you this cycle, people can go round this cycle many times in a day, once a week, once a month, once a year. And I had one client, it was 7 years it took her to go round the cycle. So you've had a 4-year gap where you've been in that pause phase. Now you're in pursuit. And he's suggested to you, after listening to about your aches and pains, that he could give you a massage and what it sounds like and more. So you're in pursuit. Now, if you accept that pursuit, you have the opportunity to move into honeymoon. But if there are issues with this relationship, with this guy who's come back into your life, if there are issues with him and they're not resolved, then that build-up will happen again and you will move into a cycle again, okay? So it's I hope you can all hear me. So it's very important that you are mindful that, man, oh man, I don't know if you could hear it or not, but anyway, I'm going to keep going. So basically, if you're aware that there's issues, be very aware that you could go around the cycle again with him. So that's really important to think about as well, whether you want to go into that kind of a relationship. So there's 2 things here. There's whether you want to reconnect with your first guy or whether you want to go into what sounds like what might be a pretty volatile relationship with the other guy. Something I want you to really bear in mind is as we go through life, what's Roma saying? My phone's gone dark for some reason. Sounds fine, Elizabeth. Oh, good. Okay, well, I'll keep going because the noise here is deafening. It's almost putting me off, okay? So that's why I keep hesitating. So you've got 2 situations here. You either go back to the man that you've been seeing and be honest with him, and I would strongly recommend you do that. I think sometimes we think people are more fragile than what they really are, and if he can't sit with you being honest with him about how you're feeling, then it's not a relationship. It's what you were describing. It's coffee dates, friends with benefits. It's not a relationship. I would proceed with caution with this other guy, and remember that you're taking yourself into a really precarious space where you're going to be concealing a secret. Not only that, it sounds like you're going to be dealing with someone who's pretty volatile, who has come back into your life. All right? Keep in mind, if it wasn't him, it'd be someone else. The other thing I want to talk to you about is I get the impression here that you are dating and that you're older. Now, I want you to really think about your expectations. You've talked about, I got stuck with a template of the rules of engagement of when I was in my 20s and dating. And often what can happen is we get caught in this expectation that when we go into a relationship with someone, that it's going to be like it would have been when we were young. And people, as they progress through their life, they gather baggage. They don't just have the baggage that their family gives them. They have all the baggage that comes with being in life and having had relationships and children and parents and elderly parents and financial issues and you name it, they've got it. And so life is often not as uncomplicated as it was when we were young. And you haven't said how old you were when you got married, but I know for me, when I first met my partner, you know, I think it was complicated, but it wasn't. I got married very young, and life was very uncomplicated. And so it meant moving in together, working out how we were going to live together, working out our rules together was bloody hard when I think back. And I can tell you some really big mere male stories about Prince Charming from back then in particular. But I can't even contemplate it. If I was single now and I'm at the halfway mark with my age, I mean, my reality tells me that to combine with someone else who's also at the halfway mark, who's really set in their ways, and let me tell you, I'm pretty set in mine, would be pretty bad. In fact, it'd be really hard. In fact, it might well be nigh on impossible if I added in children and children's expectations and my elderly dad and all the things that I have to deal with, you know? So there's something about having a dose of reality in what's possible now for a relationship. And I say to many of my clients, because they'll often say to me, I feel like I'm stuck. You know, they're sort of, you know, in that middle-age space, and they're dating someone else that's in that middle-age space, and they'll say, we go out, we have lovely days out, but somehow, you know, we're not moving to that next stage. And I say, hey, maybe you're not going to, because to do it is just too hard. So maybe you need to say to yourself, you know what? I'm in a perpetual dating cycle with my partner, and we're having fun, and we have time together and time apart, which I haven't long written a whole blog post on that's going to be coming up onto my blog, and that is that whole concept of negotiating that space. And I don't think I've even stepped into that concept of older relationships and what's possible and what isn't. But, you know, that's a whole other topic I might do a whole blog post on. And that is that, you know, you have to kind of be able to negotiate your relationship around what's possible now that you're older. And so maybe this idea of coffee dates and friends with benefits, provided it's safe, that might be what's possible. And even a really close, intimate relationship might still have separate houses, separate families, and some things you do separately and some things you do together. So I hope that's helpful to you as well. So that's where I'm at with it, with this question. If I give you a quick summary, being able to sit with the fact that you need to do what's right for you. There is no clear answer about whether you can separate your emotions out of sexuality or not. Making a decision about whether you want to step into that intimacy with the partner that's got the sexual problems, and being able to have that conversation with him using the shit sandwich method. You know, you're wonderful, you're gorgeous, you're fabulous, I adore you, I love everything about you, but I've got this problem. And couch it in, you really fire me up, but, you know, I'm a red-blooded woman and I need the next stage. Then being able to maybe talk to him about some possible solutions in a very gentle way, and then coming back in with because I really want the sex to happen with you, however it happens, you know? So you got that shit sandwich thing happening. But being really aware that if you're going to do this, you're inviting him into further intimacy. And you did mention you weren't sure whether you wanted the relationship to be long-term. So being really careful about that. Then there's this other guy who I think is danger territory. I think you're in a cycle with him. I think that this pause you've had for 4 years, that it's been 4 years since you've seen him, is the pause, and I think you're in pursuit mode. And I seriously think that if you accepted his pursuit, you'd go into honeymoon, you'd have a great big fabulous time with him, but that if you don't address the reasons why you didn't continue to see him in the first place, that you will have a build-up, you'll go around the cycle into another event of some sort, whether it's an argument or you just decide to disengage, and you'll have a disengagement of some sort, and then he may go another 4 years and then ring you again, or not. So that's what I think is happening with him. So you need to really proceed with caution with him. Don't get caught up in it. Remember, you are only human, and he is waving the chocolate under your nose. So you need to be really mindful of that you are only human, and that, of course, it is absolutely normal and natural, regardless of where you are at in life stage, to want to have connection with someone. All right? So that's my answer to your question today. If you would like to ask me a relationships question, please send your